Be easier for me to just show you how I would present my PowerPoint on improving student engagement and limiting the power of these cheating apps that we have all over the place now. So this would be my presentation as if I was going to be giving this to the people who needed the information and how it would come across. So the first thing that I would do on it for improving is you got to identify the problem. So here's the problem that we're at right now. It is very easy to cheat on mathematical homework with current technologies. I think we'd all agree on that, and it's getting more and more advanced every day, and it's getting easier and easier every day. Next, cheating on math homework has a snowball effect that drastically affects performance as math courses continue. Whenever you start getting those gaps because people are cheating and not actually doing their work, they're not able to do the next thing that they need to do. And the cumulative effects of these eventually cause poor performance on state assessment, local assessment, ACT, in everything, even the next course that we take. And it is very difficult to prove cheating on homework. Many of the apps that we have now will work it and actually show the steps. And if they write it down, it is really difficult to tell whether they did it or not. And then just from a personal standpoint, it's tough accusing someone of cheating. It's tough, and you better be right, and you better have some proof. Because if not, it's going to be a he said, she said kind of situation, and it really doesn't get anywhere. So it's tough, and it's difficult for teachers to do. So here's some solutions that might actually help, and hopefully have several advantages. So the professional development support plan that I would put together, we would try it for a semester and see how this works. So for the next semester, here's what we'll be implementing. We will be implementing a minimum of one time per week. We will implement what is called a Panther Essentials quiz during or at the end of each math class. It can be more than one time if teachers find this effective and it's something that they wanted to do, but we want to be able to do this so we could actually have some baseline data and see if this is actually helping. And I have done this type of thing in my class many different times in many different situations to help students in terms of making sure they know what they're doing and learning and staying focused. So here's how the plan would work. First of all, the software platform that I've used in the past is called CUDA, and I'm not sure if that's something that we have here, but CUDA is basically a software package that can create these infinitely many worksheets over different topics, and they are very good at working with state standards. Now, they're not great technically working on like application problems of state standards, but actually getting the state standards and how to do them and the facts and the basics there, it's excellent. And it's got infinitely many problems for you to choose from. And it's a very user-friendly app. And what we would do is we would use this application to create some basically short quizzes that we would call Panther Essential Quizzes. This is definitely a supplement to the mathematical curriculum. It is not something that we would rely on, but this is a way that hopefully when we present it in this method would help student learning, and it will help avoid some of the cheating and making sure some students know some things. Okay. And the other thing is we don't want teachers to have to spend a lot of time doing this. They have a lot to prep for anyway. We've got other things we have to deal with. This is a quick way to make it happen. So Panther Essential Quizzes will be anywhere from 3 to 8 questions, and it can vary. If you want to do 2 or up to 10, that's fine, but we want it to be short. We want it to be something that'll fit in about a 10 to 15 minute window for most students. But it depends on the topic, obviously, of what you're teaching, and I have an example of this coming up of how I would do it. And Panther Essential Quizzes will be weighted heavier than assignments. We want it to make it more for the student to have to do these quizzes in terms of the actual wanting to get the higher score for this to happen, because without weighting them, they become just as equal as the assignments. And if they cheat on those, they figure, well, I'll just do okay on this, and then it'll kind of balance out. We want it to weigh a little bit more, to have a little more bite in what their grade is going to be. So, with that in mind, how a typical Panther Essential Day quiz would work in a 75-minute class. Now, obviously, this would need to change based on what our schedule was, but I just picked a 75-minute class. 5 minutes would be just the welcome, opening, the normal things that you do, bell work, anything that you do to open up your class. It would be 10 minutes of answering questions of previous day assignment or grading or whatever you need to do, the household things to kind of get you ready to wrap up the day before. And again, that's different for everybody. Then once the actual teaching time starts, you'd have 20 minutes to teach the lesson or the activity. Now, in this section right here, this is where you do the majority of your teaching, And on the next screen, I'll kind of explain how I would do that with an actual pre-algebra problem. But this would be your just basically lecture time, presenting different topics, different types of situations, application problems, just your normal teaching. But then once you got done with that, we would have a 10-minute focused lesson on the essential standards of the actual lesson that you are teaching. This is what we are going to be giving our Panther quiz on, our Panther's Essential Quiz. We want this to be the most essential thing we can get out of the daily lesson. And like I said, I have an example on the next slide to show you what's happening. But what we would need to identify is what is most important out of this section. Is there state outcomes in the section? Is it something they would need in a future math class? Is it something on the ACT? Is it something that can lead to level 3 success? Then in that 10 minutes, you would basically saying, okay, I'm going to go over any of these essential things we talked about in the first 20 minutes, and we're really going to focus on them and see if anyone has questions. Then, this is the most important part. Give them about 10 to 15 minutes of focused practice. A lot of times what you can do is if you have an assignment that's 1 to 30, usually there are problems like 1 to 10 or 10 to 15, and say, you are going to be having a quiz coming up over these types of problems in 15 minutes. Give them time to actually work together. Give them time for you to be there. Give them time for other students to be around. And this focused practice time, it doesn't have to be exactly 15 minutes, but somewhere around there where they'll have some time to actually work on the essential standards, not get caught up in a word problem they struggle with, but essential standards. And again, the next screen, I'll have an example of that. Then the last 15 minutes, you would actually give the Panther Essential Quiz. Remember, it's a short quiz, shouldn't take them too long. And then any extra time, you can have them work on the homework, finish up anything that you didn't get in the 20 minutes, work on application problems, work on other things that will help them as well. So an example of this would be working on how would I teach a pre-algebra lesson with this, and then we can talk about the advantages of it. So once I reached the time to teach the new lesson, I would teach the basic concepts, the terminology, and at least one application problem, that 20 minutes, to give them kind of the big picture of what's happening. And if I was doing this in pre-algebra, I'm just going to go ahead and use slope-intercept form as an example. If I was teaching slope-intercept form, I would give them the big picture in the 20 minutes. I would go ahead and then decide that my essential standard is this. They have got to know how to identify the slope and the y-intercept of a problem in slope-intercept form, and they would also probably need to know how to graph it, essentially on the first day. So tell them that after the 20 minutes of instruction, I would focus on what is most important, and that's what I would pick as my actual Panther Essential Quiz. So after I had picked out those essentials, I would tell them, you've got 15 minutes to work on these problems to focus on what is on the Panther Essential Quiz only. Don't throw them a weird word problem. Don't give them something crazy where that would take some more time where they could do it as homework, but something that is essential. And on the state assessment, ACT, they're going to be asking for, what's the slope? What's the y-intercept? What does this graph mean? And then you could tie it to other things as well, okay? Then at the end of 15 minutes, you go ahead and give them that question set, let them work together or independently, focusing on those essential topics. And like I said, it's usually part of their overall assignment anyway, so they can get that done. And then you will be amazed at how in that 15 minutes, how you can hear kids talk. They'll have some actual, anxiousness about wanting to do well because they know it weights more and because they know it's going to be a quiz and because they are given all the opportunity to have the teacher there, to have other students around. And they are given the most valuable thing, time, to actually practice those essential standards. So the advantages of that, of what happens is, the students have a short-term goal, which tends to focus them. If you've noticed that, especially like middle school, if you say, hey, in 15 minutes we're taking a quiz, they can handle that, and they can get focused on that situation. The student will be with you and be monitored, so you're not having to worry about them using photo math or whatever else to get their answers. You're there. You can see it. You can see what's going on. And you're also there to help if they're struggling. So if they're at home, sometimes kids give up on homework and they just say, hey, I'm going to go ahead and just cheat because, well, I want to get this done. Once students know the essentials, they are more likely to attempt the rest of the homework instead of cheat. if you think about this, they'll have an opportunity to actually have a basis of knowledge. So they might be able to actually apply that and not struggle with it so much and cause them to stop, which a lot of times causes kids to cheat. The students will also be practicing essential standards that will help in their success and in turn help them with our assessment scores. It all goes together. It's a valuable time slot to get that done. The higher weight on the quizzes motivates the students, and even if they cheat on the homework after that, they've at least learned something instead of nothing. So it does give us that benefit where we're basically going to be able to show over a semester period. If we do one a week, that's going to be 18 essential standards, 18 essential things that we are like, yes, you need to know this, and yes, we're giving you time to do it, and yes, we're focusing on that. Okay? And then another thing that I found as students like in general, it breaks up the class into intervals of change. So it's not like, I'm going to listen to a lecture for this amount of time or 40 minutes or 50 minutes and then do it. It's kind of short intervals. We're doing this, we're doing this, we're doing that. So the intervals can also help as well. So with that in mind and with the examples, I would then ask for any questions or concerns that we would have, and then work from there and just see what would come up and see what would benefit, what wouldn't benefit, things that would obviously maybe be barriers to it, and things that would actually even be more advantages to it. And then we would obviously work together to make it work for the class that we are doing. Thank you.